this snowy night. I hope you all got out to caucus on Monday night. Yeah, that's right. And regardless of who you work so hard for, you know, we need to win back this U.S. Senate seat. It's not enough to just win back the presidency. Today's a big day for me. We kicked off our Here in the Heartland tour today. We have attended over 90 public events around the state so far, and today we kicked off Here in the Heartland. We started up in Boone, had a few events there, made our way over to Story County, just left Iowa State with a group of students. That was fantastic, and wrapping up our night here with you. One of the things I liked about coming to a group hub and a combination of students, it reminded me of when I went to Iowa Lakes Community College as a freshman. And when I was with the students today, we talked a lot about student loan debt and learned a lot about their hopes and dreams, of course. But I told them that when I was their age, I got a job at Pizza Hut up in Esterville, Iowa. I loved it. But I was able to make enough money to pay my rent, buy my books, pay my tuition, and get a beer on Friday night. And here we are, having a beer on Friday night. All right. Most of you know me. I'm Theresa Greenfield. I'm running for the United States Senate for the opportunity to take on incumbent Joni Ernst this fall. I'm thrilled to be in this fight. I'm a businesswoman. I'm a mother of 4, and I'm a farm kid. I grew up on a little farm outside of a town of 500 near Bryceland, Minnesota, which is right on the Minnesota-Iowa border in the center of the state. And I had a high school class of 24. Yeah, 24. It's the same people like you took a nap with, that you graduated with. And my parents, they raised 5 kids. They raised row crops, they raised hogs, and my dad was a crop duster. And I'll tell you, as a little girl, watching your dad soar through the sky, you know, crop dusting just fascinated me, and I absolutely loved it. Now, on the farm, that's where I learned to work hard, and there's always a lot of hard work to do. My favorite job was crop dusting, of course. My least favorite job was shoveling the smelly brown stuff in the hog barn. Yep, I hated that. But one of the things that my parents did that I think really prepared me well for life, but also to run for the United States Senate, is they had a rule, and it went like this. There's no boy jobs, and there's no girl jobs. There's just jobs that need to get done on the farm. And I'll tell you, it's no different in Washington, D.C. We've got jobs to get done. Iowans have been left behind by Senator Joni Ernst. All right, so when I graduated high school, it was 1982, interest rates were 21%. Go 82. And it was the start of the farm crisis. And you know what? Family farms were in ruin all around the Midwest. And my family was no different. My parents, they had to sell their crop dusting business. They had to sell their hogs. They never farmed again. And all 5 of us kids ended up leaving our rural area. And so began so much of the rural decline that we've seen, because then the school closed, you know, the grocery stores closed, the vets leave town, and on and on and on. And today, my parents, like a lot of parents throughout the Midwest, you know, they drive 20, 30 miles for groceries, for their faith community, for their hospitals and their care. And of course, today in Iowa, you know, net farm income is down 75% since 2013. Since Joni Ernst came to office, net farm income has gone down. And I'll tell you what, she is no friend of our farmers. They need someone in Washington, D.C. who's going to fight for them from day one and not wait until an 85th ethanol waiver. Because those policies in Washington, it isn't just affecting our farmers, it's affecting our manufacturers and our main streets, our small towns too. Now, I'm also in this fight for personal reasons. I gotta tell you, I certainly am a feisty farm girl, but that's not the only reason I'm here. And for me, it stems from Social Security. You see, I was widowed at the age of 24. And my first husband, he was a lineman for the power company. He was a union member. He was a member of IBEW. Are there any union members and union families here tonight? Couple back here? All right. Listen, unions built the middle class in this country, and Rod and I benefited from it. And they've been under attack for many, many years. And I, for one, will be standing strong with unions. Every time I get a microphone, I'm going to talk about the good work that unions have done. I'll never forget why my lights come on, who delivers my mail, Who cleans my streets? Etc., etc., etc. Those are union families and union jobs.
How about why we have an 8-hour workday?
There you go. Another good thing. Why we have an 8-hour workday. That's right. That's right. Thank you. All right. So Rod, highly paid, highly skilled, made great benefits, saving for a dignified retirement. We were saving for a home. We'd welcomed home our first son. And all that changed for me on a bright, sunny June day. You know, I got Rod off to work. I helped him pack his lunch. I snuck that Snickers bar in there because he loves Snickers bars. But about 3 in the afternoon, the priest knocked at my door. And I'll tell you, when you're 24, you don't know why the priest is at your door. And I learned that Rod had been electrocuted and died, and I became a widow. A young mom, single mom with a 13-month-old and another one on the way. And I'm here to tell you that I wouldn't be here today if it weren't for Social Security and hard-earned union benefits. And folks, thank you. And I'll tell you, I get up early and stay late to win back this seat because Mitch McConnell and Joni Ernst, they talk about privatizing Social Security and cutting Medicare. And that tax bill that they voted for and enacted, it now threatens Social Security and Medicare. Not to mention adding $2 trillion to our debt. We all should be worried about Social Security, Medicare, and our debt. All right, with Social Security, I was able to go back to college. And a few years later, I got my very first job. I worked as a community planner. I made $8 an hour. You know what else I got? I got my dignity back. Because I will tell you what, absolutely everybody in this country wants the dignity of providing for their families, even young widows. And you know, I knew that $8 an hour job, it would lead to the next job, and the next job, and the next job. And it did for me. Because we know right now in America, too many people can't work 2 jobs and make ends meet for their families. And we have got to talk about this income inequality that we have going on. And so many of our presidential candidates, it's a high priority, and it should be. So I became a community planner. I eventually became the president of a home building company, and most recently was the president of a commercial real estate company in Des Moines, a small business. We have about 8 employees. Frankly, it's just like Iowa. We are a state of small towns and small businesses, just like the one I recently ran. Let's see, what else I tell you? I've remarried. My husband Steve and I, we have 4 kids. Their ages are 33 to 26. I call it Love American Style because it's 1 from his first marriage, it's 2 from my marriage, and we got 1 little guy together who's 26. And you know what? I love my kids, mostly because they don't live with me anymore, you guys. We love being empty nesters. It's true. Little guy Dane, he serves the United States Army. And he just re-enlisted for another 6 years. And I always like to just give a little shout out, a little thank you for everybody that served or has served or know people that served. Thank you, not me, you. All right, so what does all this mean to you? That's why you're here. I tell you these stories because I want you to know that my grit and my resolve, it's rooted right here in rural America. This is where I grew up and this is where I live, and I care. And I intend to take this fight to every single county, every single precinct across this state to defeat Joni Ernst this fall and bring back this United States Senate seat to Iowa for someone who's going to put Iowa first, not special interests. You know, Joni Ernst has taken over $1.7 million from special interest groups, corporate lobbyists, corporate PACs. I'll tell you what, when you're beholden to those kinds of special interests, you're not putting Iowa first. And I have taken a pledge not to accept any corporate PAC donations. And Citizens United has endorsed our campaign, and I am thrilled to be in this fight. With that grassroots support from many of you here, we have actually outraised Senator Ernst the last 6 months of 2019, so thanks for your help. Okay, before we get to conversation, as I said, we kicked off our Hear It in the Heartland tour today. We've done about 90 public events around the state so far. I want to tell you what your neighbors are talking about as I get to all corners of the state. 5 things really come up everywhere I go. And number 1 is healthcare. It costs too much. It costs too much. Premiums, deductibles, out-of-pocket expenses, prescription drugs. And folks are talking about the viability of their hospitals. They're talking about protections for pre-existing conditions. conditions, and they're worried that they're going to lose those things. And I remind them that Senator Ernst, she voted over and over again to take away your protections for pre-existing conditions, for the ability to keep your kids on your health care until you're 26. She voted to end the Medicaid expansion, which has kept so many of our hospitals' lights on. Now, I don't know about all of you, but my parents drive that 20, 30 miles to a nearby hospital. And if it closes because we lose Medicaid expansion, I'll tell you what, they're going to have to go to Mankato or down to Mason City. That's an awful long drive for folks to have to go to get health care in this country. Second, we're talking about the economy and jobs. Folks are worried about the impacts of trade and tariffs and ethanol waivers. 85 ethanol waivers. We've had plants shutter. Jobs are lost. John Deere is downplaying their earnings and have laid people off. I hear about the concern of this Iowa economy because of the leadership of Senator Ernst, Mitch McConnell. It's hurting Iowa's economy. Number 3, education. Iowans are proud of their education. They absolutely want more investment in their public school education. I'm not going to go into it too much here. But really, it's taught from cradle throughout the career. Pre-K, retraining, investing, getting more folks to join an apprenticeship and earn while they learn. We can do that. Number 4, big money in politics. Again, Iowans think it's darn unfair, because it is, that large corporations can put unlimited amounts of money into dark money groups, and they could come in and put their thumb on the scale of an election. While you have limits to the amounts that you can give, and by the way, I hope you all give, and then add a 0. But it's unfair. And Senator Ernst, again, continues to accept, I think just this last quarter, tens of thousands of corporate PAC donations that you shouldn't have to accept. It makes you beholden to special interest groups. Finally, it's climate action. Your friends and neighbors around this state are worried about our climate. And some of them, they talk to me about strange and severe weather. They know those 3-inch rains just aren't right. They know the flooding we've had throughout this state. It's wrong. But they also see what's going on in California with fires and large hurricanes off the coast of Florida and the melting of glaciers in Alaska. That kind of flooding and those kinds of rains, that's climate change here in Iowa, and they want action. And the only way we're going to get it is to get a new senator. Senator Joni Ernst, she rejects climate science and dismisses it. Help me fire her in this fall. All right, I'm going to wrap it up. Thank you so much for coming out tonight. Thank you for supporting my campaign. I'm hoping all of you can lend a hand, roll up your sleeves, help us win this thing in November. And here's my promise to you. I'm never going to forget who I am, where I'm from, why I'm standing here, and who I'm fighting for. And that's you and the opportunity to put Iowa first as your next U.S. Senator. Thank you very much. All right, tell me what Marshalltown folks are thinking. I can share your thoughts tomorrow when I'm in other counties. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I think all the things you said, and I think part of it too is maybe even the national debt. You kind of mentioned that, and I don't hear a lot of candidates talk about that, and I actually asked Elizabeth Warren about that when she was here. But, I think, how are we going to reduce our national debt, and without necessarily, making a big raise in the taxes, or, do you have any thoughts about that?
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, I think Iowans are incredibly disappointed in Senator Ernst. She told us she was going to be different, she was going to be independent, she was going to make them squeal in Washington, D.C. And under her watch, our debt has risen $2 trillion. I believe the deficit has increased about $1 trillion. So we're going to have some work to do. But I'm confident that we can go out there and roll up our sleeves. We have got to end the divisiveness in Washington and start talking about these issues that we all care and getting that kind of work done. Let me give you another issue that I don't see as a Republican or a Democratic issue. Right now, Iowa is 50th in the nation in bridge suitability. We got the worst bridges in the country. And Americans are asking for an infrastructure plan to fix bridges and roads and bring broadband, etc., to our states and our communities. Those broken bridges, they're not Republican or Democrat. They're bridges in our communities for our friends and neighbors to use. We need leaders who want to end that divisiveness and solve those kinds of problems. So, thank you. Hands in the back.
What about all the environmental rollbacks of regulations that are going on? I know that Joni is in total support of all that, even though there isn't a single river or lake or pond in Iowa that people can even play in anymore. Algae is growing. A couple of dogs died last summer after drinking water at Saylorville, wasn't it? I mean, Iowa is horrible about the environmental regulations also, but they're doing things without telling us. And it's going to ruin our air and the clean water and clean air that our current president is so much in favor of.
Well, thank you very much for that comment. You know, I'm optimistic about Iowans. Remember, quite a few, not quite a few, but a few years ago, you know, we voted for a constitutional amendment to invest in our clean water and our clean streams. And it's only been the Republican leadership in this state who's been unwilling to fund it. We as voters, overwhelmingly, so that's not just Democratic or just Republican voters, Iowans care about their environment, they care about their water, and they want it to be clean and cleaned up. Whether you're farmers, whether you live in the city, doesn't matter. That's a priority to Iowans. Here's the deal. Senator Ernst, she voted for Eric Wheeler, who is making those changes right now. How do we do it different? We elect different leaders who share our values, Iowa values of clean air and clean water.
Which of course you support.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Mental health issues.
By the way, you have the right sweatshirt on tonight.
Do I?
Yes.
Just gonna say that.
It's okay. People who support those on the other side, one day they'll learn. Anyway, mental health issues. If you follow things in agriculture, as it sounds like you do, the suicide rate of farmers currently is the highest it has ever been in the state of Iowa, even back to the days of the 80s, which you know very well. So if you look at it, our son was adopted. He came to us with a baggage load of problems. He could never accept that he was a good person. Always chose the wrong friends. Ended up in prison. Back in prison now. We spent 12 years raising his son, who is autistic, until there was finally a home pocket open for him down in Altoona. And we could slide him in there because in the middle of rural Iowa, you cannot find good qualified help, and that's the thing. So, why is it that people do not want to readily accept the fact that mental health issues are out there across the board, and that we need to be more proactive and put more money into early childhood development, early childhood care, as opposed to prisons.
Thank you for your comments, and thank you for sharing your story. When I mentioned that healthcare is the #1 topic I hear about, I apologize. Mental health care is in that conversation. It comes up everywhere I go, whether it's stories like yours from families that don't have the resources and can't find the care in this state that we need, to schools where children are struggling and teachers are struggling with their mental health too. It absolutely is a serious concern here in our state. And of course we know that our previous governor closed 2 of our mental health hospitals, further limiting those resources. So there's a demand for more mental health care in this state. I know that the state has begun to take some action but hasn't funded it. Just keep asking your legislators, Republican and Democrat, to fund mental health care for this state. And keep working with those groups like NAMI to get that done. Yeah, thank you.
I'm a farmer, so I like what you said about the waivers, ethanol waivers, which President Trump absolutely promised that he wouldn't do, since EPA I also understand when he says he solved the tariff problem with China, a problem that he actually created by his tariffs. So, long story short, I guess I would like to say, if you're a Democratic senator, that you would not just rubber stamp a policy by a Democratic president. And if a Democratic president would ever do half of what Donald Trump has done, you would just not rubber stamp it.
Thank you, that's a great question. And that's part of the reason I decided to run. I think that we have got to start putting our states, what's good for our state. I'm trying to just continue to see, before party politics, before national politics, we have to stand up for our states. And I'll tell you, when Senator Ernst cast a vote for Eric Wheeler and Scott Pruitt, folks who represent big oil and coal, I knew that she was not going to be fighting for Iowa's ethanol industry. And that eventually it would come back home here and hurt our corn producers in particular, folks who've invested in that industry, and ultimately families that have lost their jobs around this state. So no, I will not just rubber stamp anything that a president puts in front of us. We need to be independent thinkers. Unlike Senator Ernst, who went to Washington, D.C., left Iowans behind, joined party leadership, and votes 99% of the time with Mitch McConnell and party leaders. Are we done? Look at, they're giving me that, we gotta go. Thank you for the comments.
All right, I'm gonna take the question.
Yes.
So it seems to me, I'm all about this PAC stuff, okay? It seems to me like the only way to really let Washington, D.C. and the people who are running to have integrity with themselves, to be good people, and to do what's right for the people, is to take the money out. I was reading some statistics, like in 2018, $2.5 billion in the top 25 PACs were then donated to campaign or run commercials. That's a lot of money. That could have built a wall just off a PAC. So if people think that the undue influence in Washington, D.C. isn't the money, I think they're wrong. So my question really would be is, how can you stop that? What would you do to try to get that stopped? And can it be stopped?
Well, I think that, thank you very much. I agree with you. It's why I have taken a pledge not to accept any corporate PAC donations as part of my campaign. Look, I've worked in small business all my life. I understand business and appreciate it. Hey, we're a state of small towns and small businesses. But I'll tell you what, that kind of influence, which is different than your influence. You as an individual, the maximum you can donate is $5,600. And that's a pretty good chunk of change, for sure. But corporations and wealthy individuals can put unlimited amounts into these dark money groups. And that's just wrong. One solution is what they've done in Montana. Governor Steve Bullock, they've created some transparency around these donors and around these PACs and required them to identify, I don't know, if it's 90 days before election, don't quote me on the facts, so that people know who's influencing their elections. That would be a great first step. And of course, ultimately, I would like to end Citizens United and have a constitutional amendment overturning Citizens United. All right, you guys, the team is telling me I've got to wrap it up. But I'm going to stick around for just a few more minutes, and I really do appreciate you all coming out tonight. I cannot win this race alone. We're going to need everybody here, everybody's boots on the grounds. Chip in if you can. Don't kid yourself. $5 makes a difference. 25 bucks makes a difference. Add a couple zeros if you can. Thanks so much.